welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the book Skillful, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. Let's stop here at this alley. There's an old junk shop, and about 24 tiny houses, all forming a kind of little world of their own. It rained last night, and the sun hasn't yet dried the mud in the street, or the pair of trousers hanging fresh from a window, still soapy. A little past the trousers, we see the head of a young girl appear at the corner. She just finished fixing her hair, and now comes out to show it off. But out here, the only ones watching are you, the reader, and me. There's also a little boy, riding the windowsill across the way, kicking his heels against the wall like spurs. And 4 more boys farther ahead, standing at the door of the junk shop, looking inside. The shop is small and doesn't have much to offer. In fact, the owner, Joaquim, doesn't seem to mind. He runs the shop but also calls himself an artist, painting whenever he's not busy with the store. And he has plenty of free time. Right now he's in front of a small canvas, so focused on his work that we can take our time to look at him without him noticing. He's about 36 years old, and you couldn't really call him ugly. His face, though plain, isn't unpleasant. But life has worn him down. His skin, once soft in his younger days, is now rough. His beard is messy and unkempt. Under his chin, where he tries to shave, no razor has passed in at least 15 days. His collar is open, his chest showing. He isn't wearing a jacket or vest, and his shirt sleeves are rolled up, revealing thick, hairy arms. His pants are made of brown cotton, recently washed but full of old patches on the knees. These patches don't last long, they fall apart in the wash, undone by his wife, who also fixes them again. She's the one who does the laundry and sewing, since he doesn't hire help. The couple's son, about 6 or 7 years old, runs their errands. Joaquim moved to this alley about 2 weeks ago. Joaquim didn't expect much foot traffic in this part of town, but he figured it was his only option. There were no other second-hand furniture shops nearby, and he hoped word would spread eventually. Truth was, he hadn't had time to look for a better spot. He had to move fast after the old landlord gave him notice. At least the rent here was low. So far, he had only sold an old buffet and a wire bird cage. Not bad, considering it was early days. He wasn't worried. Everyone knew the first few weeks were always the hardest. While he waited for customers, Joaquim kept himself busy painting. But what was he painting, and why? He couldn't explain it. He never learned the basics of drawing, but ever since he was a kid, he had the urge to copy everything he saw on his paper illustrations, playing cards, fabric patterns, even the wallpaper in his room. He used to make little clay figures too, or carve them out of wood scraps and coffin pieces with a knife. One day, he visited the annual exhibition at the Academy of Fine Arts. That visit changed everything. When he came home, he was full of ideas and dreams. He painted a dramatic scene, a count murdering another count. If you looked closely, it looked like one was handing the other a dagger. He painted more scenes after that. His walls were soon filled with eyes, noses, and ears. When he saw a painting in a shop on Rua da Quitanda that showed a plate of vegetables, he tried his hand at still lifes. Later, he saw a seascape and decided to try painting the sea. Every kind of art has its own rules, but João Maria hated rules. He didn't care for learning techniques or practicing the basics. To him, art was simple. If you saw a cow, you painted a cow. That was all an artist needed to do. He believed color was something anyone could handle, weren't we all born with eyes? And as for getting shapes and poses right, that just took attention. Everything else came from talent, and João Maria was sure he had plenty of it. He never used the word genius, though. He didn't even know it. To him, genio just meant someone's mood, like being in a good or bad mood. But he often repeated the phrase had heard from relatives and friends since he was little. João Maria is very clever with his hands. João Maria didn't want to go. When someone once suggested to his father that he should send the boy to a military academy, and his father agreed to let him go, João refused outright. He rejected the idea completely. That's how he ended up trying different jobs without ever finishing any of them. Eventually, he opened a shop selling used items, a job that didn't require any special training or education. He never learned much, and he didn't have that special talent that makes people curious and eager to learn or invent things. Did he show any sign of that sacred spark that inspires greatness? Not really. All he had was stubbornness, the kind that comes from wanting something without having the skills to reach it. He started painting just for fun. People began to call him talented, and from that moment on, he couldn't go back. Every time he saw a painting, his eyes lit up. It stirred up all the old dreams he had from his teenage years. Ambitions came rushing back, grabbing him, pulling him toward a kind of glory that dazzled him. That's why he kept trying. Praise from others only pushed him harder, like how a horse's natural pride gets even stronger when it feels the rider's spurs. Look at the painting he's working on right now, near the door. It's an image of Our Lady, copied from one he saw many years ago. This is the 6th, or maybe the 7th painting he's done since he started. One day he went to visit his godmother, the widow of a captain who died in Monte Caseros. In her house he saw a painting of the Virgin made in oil. Until then, he had only seen religious images in church books, or in printed form inside wooden frames at home. He was amazed. How beautiful it was. How vivid the colors. He tried to memorize it so he could paint a copy. But his godmother was kind enough to lend him the painting itself. His first attempt didn't turn out the way he wanted. But the second one looked at least as good as the original. His mother asked him to give it to her, to place in the family's prayer room. João Maria, who cared more for public praise than for heaven's blessings, had to fight a long and painful inner battle. In the end, he gave in. And this should be said to honor his love for his mother. Because his mother, Dona João Maria, carried the painting to the shop on Rua do Ouvidor, his heart pounding like a drum. The owner, a thin man with tired eyes, studied the canvas in silence. He scratched his chin, walked around it twice, and finally sighed. "It's different," he said. "I can put it up. But only for 3 days." João Maria nodded fast, trying not to look too eager. "And the label," he said. "It must be there. My name. And that I don't know how to paint." The man raised an eyebrow. "You want people to know you're not trained?" "Yes," João Maria said. That's the point. That night, he barely slept. His room felt too small. His hands shook when he tried to read. He dreamed of crowds, of whispers, of someone pointing and saying, "Look at this one. Look how it feels alive." At dawn, he was already dressed. He drank his coffee fast, burned his tongue, and rushed out. The street was still quiet. The shop wasn't open yet. He stood across the street, pretending to tie his shoe, watching the door like a cat watches a mouse hole. When the shop finally opened, he waited 10 minutes, then 20. He crossed the street, entered slowly, and found the clerk dusting shelves. "Have many people come?" he asked. "A few," the clerk said without looking up. "And do they stop? Do they talk about it?" "They stop. I don't hear what they say." João Maria stepped closer to the painting. He read the label again. The letters were small. Too small. "They should be bigger," he said. "No one can read them from the street." The clerk shrugged. "Maybe." João Maria went back outside and tried to read the label from across the street. He couldn't. The letters were tiny, almost invisible. He frowned. "They should be bigger," he muttered to himself. And the light inside the shop was dull. Too gray. It made the colors look tired. He turned and walked away, hands behind his back, thinking. He would come back tomorrow. And the day after. He would watch. He would learn. But for now, he had done what he could. João Maria wanted to move the painting closer to the door. But the shop assistant stepped in and said no, he couldn't change the boss arrangement. They were still talking when someone walked in, an old man who went straight to the painting. João Maria's heart pounded so hard he thought his chest might split open. The man stopped in front of the painting. He looked at it, read the label, looked again, and then walked out. João Maria couldn't read anything on the man's face. Then came another visitor, and then more. Some came for other reasons, and only glanced at the painting as they passed by. Others came because of it. A few even stepped back, confused or disappointed. But João Maria saw nothing, not a clue on their blank faces. This virgin became the painting he watched most closely. The one he worked on now was the 6th or 7th version. He had quickly sold the others and even tried to display some in shops, but nothing changed. The newspapers didn't write a word about them. João Maria couldn't understand the silence, unless it was the doing of an old boyfriend of the girl he was going to marry. Not a single line. Not even one word. The first shop, on Rua do Ouvidor, refused to keep showing his work. He went to another, on Rua do Hospicio, then one on Rua da Imperatriz, and another near Rocio Pequeno. In the end, he gave up. He stopped showing his paintings altogether. From that point on, João Maria's dreams kept shrinking smaller and smaller until all he had left were family and friends. On his wedding day, he covered the living room walls with his paintings. In his mind, this tied together the two biggest parts of his life. His guests said he was a very talented young man. But even that small circle of praise began to fade. Time took away some of his relatives and friends, some through death, others through life's changes. And João Maria's art kept fading into the shadows. Now here he was, standing in front of his endless Virgin. He touched up the little angels in the cloak. The painting sat near the door. Joan Maria's wife stepped out of the house just now, holding her son's hand. She's taking him to a free homeopathic clinic where they give medicine for his head wounds. Before leaving, she reminded João Maria about a few things, while he kept painting the wooden panel. "Did you hear me, João Maria?" she asked. "What is it?" he replied absent-mindedly, tilting his head to check how a line looked. "The pot's on the stove. Check on it later." He nodded, but probably hadn't been listening at all. Meanwhile, her son was talking to 4 neighborhood boys standing by the door, watching the painting. The woman adjusted her scarf around her neck. Her face showed signs of hard work and poverty. She was thin and tired. Her black cotton dress, the only one she had for going out, had turned yellow at the sleeves and was frayed at the hem. Her leather shoes had soles worn thin from walking on rough stones. After fixing her scarf, she took her son's hand and walked to the clinic. João Maria kept painting. The boys kept watching, amazed. "Let's take a good look at him." The sun now filled the narrow alley. The air was clean, and the light was bright and beautiful. The mother of one of the boys who lived a little farther down shouted from her window for her son to come home and stop sunbathing. "Incoming, Mom. I'm watching something." And he stayed there, staring at the painting and the painter. He sat on the doorstep, and the others sat too, all of them staring wide-eyed. Now and then, they whispered to each other. A comment, a question. Which angel is baby Jesus? What does the moon under the Virgin Mary's feet mean? Or just a simple, innocent clap of approval? But they whispered everything, careful not to interrupt the artist's inspiration. They talked about him too, but less often. The man who created such beautiful and strange things filled them with admiration, almost like worship. It was hard to say if it was awe or fear. In short, a strong feeling of being smaller, less important, in his presence. João Maria, the eternal artist, doesn't even glance at the small boys watching him. He pretends not to notice them, but he feels their presence. He senses their admiration and secretly enjoys it. A few words that reach his ears make him feel good, very good indeed. He never lets go of his palette. When he's not moving his brush across the canvas, he stops, pulls his head back, tilts it slightly to the left, then to the right, staring at his work with a mysterious expression. The boys stand there, completely amazed. Then he dips the tip of his brush into the paint and fixes a detail, or adds more color to the painting. He forgets everything else, like the pot cooking on the stove or his sick son who left earlier with his mother. His entire being is focused on his art. When there's nothing more to fix or improve, he starts again anyway. He adds more layers of paint, takes apart and rebuilds, deepens the curve of a shoulder, stretches the rays of a star. He steps back again, looks at the painting, turns his head to the right, then to the left, repeats the gesture again and again, each time studying the image from a new angle. The crowd grows larger, and the boys become even more stunned by the magic happening before their eyes. This is all he truly wants from life. A quiet alley, and 4 amazed boys watching him create. This is the peak of his dreams.
Thank thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis, born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.